Well, good evening, Danvers, and anyone who's watching. This is Jim Morose, and this is a new show. This is Season 1, Episode 1, the pilot, if you will, of A Republic Always. America is a republic. It's a republic, and that's how the Founding Fathers set it up, and that's how we've lasted for the last 250 some odd years, and then some. So, I started this show just because of the there's a lot of shows that play on this channel, DCAT, that, Democracy Now! And, Global Connections and a bunch of things that, we're America and we're a republic. We're not a democracy. Well, though we have democratic forms built into our system, of our Republican system, it's not a democracy. And I've got several tapes today that will kind of 5-minute videos from PragerU that will kind of, clearly teach and identify and highlight the fact that we're a republic and not a democracy, and why. What's the difference? Do you know what the difference is between a republic and a democracy? Well, as Thomas Jefferson said, the biggest threat to our form of government is a lack of knowledge, okay, or an uninformed voter. So this is education. So the remedy, Thomas Jefferson said, is education. So my whole intent here is to, issue the facts here and some training so that you will know exactly the true history and the facts of what this country is all about. So that's where we're going to go, and that's what we're going to talk about. And Benjamin Franklin, when he left the Constitutional Convention, when they started the Constitution, when they wrote it, and with the Declaration of Independence before that, someone said, "Ben, Mr. Franklin, what kind of government did you give us?" And he said, "A republic, if you can keep it." So my contention is you can't keep it if you don't know what it is and how to defend it. And it's all in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence why we have this republic and not a democracy. And there's so many different forms of government, but we will, again, the teachers from PragerU have lots of great information, and I'm just bringing it forth. I got to try to less me, more others. So, at any rate, so you can cue up the video. We want to start it at 4 minutes, but so basically, this video is a Prager University video, and basically what's the difference between a democracy and a republic? So he's going to go through this in 5 minutes. Okay, I don't know what our children and kids are learning, through grammar school and high school and into college, but everyone thinks that we live in a democracy, and we don't, and we need to straighten that out once and for all. And so that's what this show is going to be about. And we'll watch the first video, then we'll talk it and go right into video 2. So anytime you're ready, Ben.
At the close of the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787, legend has it that a woman called out to Benjamin Franklin to ask what kind of government the delegates had created. Franklin responded, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." A republic? Shouldn't Franklin have said a democracy? Isn't that what we have in the United States? Most people today would say yes. After all, if our country isn't a democracy, what is it? It's not a dictatorship, the rule of one man, or an oligarchy ruled by a small group. In America, the people are in charge. That's literally what democracy means in the original Greek. Demos, kratos. The people, demos, rule, kratos. But let's pause for a moment and consider more deeply what the word means in practice and why the delegates in Philadelphia rejected it. That's right, rejected it. Our government was established by a national charter, the Constitution of the United States. We are governed by the institutions and according to the rules and principles created and adopted when our forebears ratified that document, making it the supreme law of the land. Are those institutions, properly speaking, democratic? The men who bequeathed our form of government to us, those we call our founding fathers, didn't see it that way. They understood the institutions established by the Constitution to be republican. In fact, though the founders believed in government of the people, by the people, for the people, as Abraham Lincoln put it in the Gettysburg Address, they did not believe in pure or unrestricted democracy. They feared that democracy, strictly speaking, contained within it the impulse to mob rule, the stifling of civil liberty, the trampling by majorities of the rights of minorities. To put it more bluntly, pure democracy frightened them. So while they built into the Constitution significant democratic elements, they also built in non-democratic features to protect liberty and prevent tyranny. It wasn't simply that they favored representative government over direct democracy, though they did. It's that they rejected the idea that the majority wins was by definition the just outcome. Indeed, in what is perhaps the most famous of the 85 Federalist Papers, Federalist 10, James Madison, precisely in distinguishing a democracy, which he did not favor, from a republic, which he did, noted that a crucial advantage of republicanism is to refine the public views by passing them through the medium of a chosen body of citizens whose wisdom may best discern the true interests of the country. And so we have representative government, and more than that, we have a bicameral, that is, two-tiered legislature, a Congress with a highly democratic House of Representatives and a not very democratic Senate. Therefore, California, with its massive population, has 52 representatives in the House. Wyoming has 1. Yet Wyoming has 2 senators, the same number as California and every other state. A pure Democrat would say that's unfair. Each Wyoming resident has far more power than every Californian. But a Republican would say, well, we aren't and shouldn't be a pure democracy. If we were, large population states like California would overwhelm the needs and interests of small population states like Wyoming. That's why we're called the United States of America. Each state has its own separate identity, holds its own separate elections. Just as we don't want one person or small group of people to dominate our government, we don't want one state or a few states to dominate our government. A republic is a way of diffusing power, and a brilliant one at that. We see something similar in the Constitution's procedures for choosing a president. An obvious possibility would have been by a national popular vote. The founders wisely decided against this option. Rather, they created an electoral college to protect the interests of the less populous states. Even today, their decision makes sense. As my Princeton colleague, Professor Alan Gelzo, observes, a direct national popular vote would incentivize campaigns to focus almost exclusively on densely populated urban areas. The electoral college system incentivizes candidates to court voters more broadly, making presidential elections more fully national. So if we understand the system of government our founders bequeathed to us, we will see why they preferred to describe it as a republic rather than a democracy. Of course, it has strong democratic elements, but America was not created to be a pure democracy, for very good reasons. Those reasons remain as valid today as they were in 1789. We should not go along with those who today are demanding constitutional changes simply because this or that institution or procedure established by the Constitution, say the Senate or the Electoral College, is not democratic. More democratic doesn't necessarily mean better. It doesn't necessarily mean more just. Our founders understood this. So should we. We have a republic, and we should keep it. I'm Robert George, McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence and Director of the James.
Welcome back. Okay, as you can see, there are subtle differences between a republic and a democracy, okay, as he just clearly identified. And one of the points he brought up was, the Founding Fathers thought democracy kind of was like a mob rule because he with the most votes wins. It doesn't mean whether your issue is just or unjust. It's just as long as you have 50% plus 1 vote, you win, and that becomes law. But that's not really a good method. I mean, and right now, legislators from town hall to city hall and state buildings, state capitals, and down to the feds, we've got way too many liberals in there who are focusing on democracy and pretty things, and not what's actually what we should be doing with our laws. Okay, and in fact, that the Constitution, it's a binding document. It binds the government into a box. There's certain things that they're allowed to do and certain things they're not allowed to do. So we need to, our current lawmakers don't quite understand that. They create laws that just don't really meet the constitutional muster. And we'll get into that later in some of the other episodes, but, there were some people who wanted, legislators to start citing the constitutional, basis for why they were passing this law. What's their authority in the Constitution? And they would not vote for that because half the stuff they do is not even constitutional, doesn't even come close. But then again, we have the judicial system, the judicial branch of government is supposed to be running the checks and balances, but they're kind of leaning towards the liberal side also, and the Democratic side, which is not really what the founding fathers envisioned. We need to get back to the center. So those are the differences between a democracy and a republic. And he talked about the Federalist Papers. Federalist number 10 kind of really goes into the details and the nuts and bolts of this. We're going to be ready for video 2 at 12 minutes there. And then our next video is going to go into the details of why a republic. So what specifically are the good points of this republic that we're in, okay? And like I said, mob rule, the democracy is like a mob rule. Some people equate it to something like, there's 7 wolves and 3 lambs taking a vote on what's for lunch. So it's 7-3. Guess who wins? The wolves win and the lambs are on the menu. That's not the way it's supposed to be. We need to have just laws created by just people that are, okay, go ahead, let him rip. He'll tell you all about it.
Against all odds, the Americans won their War of Independence, but their success brought a new challenge, no less daunting. What sort of government should they choose for themselves? How could they ensure that the tyranny of the English king, George III, would not be replaced by a homegrown tyranny? One possibility was to establish an American monarchy with a better king. That was tempting for some, especially because they had a superb person for the job, General George Washington. To his legion of admirers, the fact that he did not want to be king made him an even more attractive candidate. The other possibility was to establish a republic, a government of and by the people and their representatives. But this solution came with a big problem. Historically, republics like those in ancient Greece and Rome had always failed. And when they failed, they were usually replaced by the very worst, most oppressive forms of tyranny. Might there be a way to make republicanism work and last? To structure a constitution that would protect the new American republic from the social and political pathologies that had destroyed republics throughout history. America's founding fathers, men like Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison, believed they had answers. They had risked everything when they declared their independence from England. They were willing to risk everything again to create a new, different, and better type of republic. The key, they all agreed, was to establish structural limits on power, the power of anyone and any institution exercising governmental authority. In the summer of 1787, in one of the most creative acts in human history, these men, minus Jefferson and Adams, who were serving the country abroad, fashioned a national government divided into 3 separate parts or branches: the legislative, Congress, the executive, the president, and the judicial, the courts. Congress would make the laws. The executive would execute the laws, and the courts would settle disputes arising under the Constitution and laws of the United States. Dividing power would prevent power being concentrated in any one branch, the concept of checks and balances. Moreover, the central government would be limited to the powers specifically delegated to it, having no powers beyond those enumerated. Where then would most of the powers of government reside? The answer was with the states. This was not, as some wrongly suppose, done to protect slavery. Rather, it was done out of the common sense belief that those public officials nearer to the people would naturally be more responsive and accountable to the people. Just to make sure nobody missed the point, after attaching a Bill of Rights to the Constitution, the founders enshrined this principle in the 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. In short, whatever the Constitution does not specifically delegate to the national government belongs to the states and the people. But the power of the states was also limited by constitutional prohibitions in certain areas, either because power in those areas had been delegated exclusively to the national government, such as the power to enter into treaties with other nations, or because the framers did not want government at any level to have certain powers, such as the power to confer titles of nobility, something incompatible with republicanism. Still, as much care as the framers took to constrain government power, federal and state, they knew their efforts would fail unless one more component was present: citizens imbued with the spirit of republicanism, people who understood the principles of their Constitution, who valued self-government, and who would be willing to do the work necessary for its maintenance. Citizens who would not yield to demagogues who promised prosperity, security, or anything else at the price of liberty. James Madison had this in mind when he said that only a well-instructed people could be permanently a free people. By a well-instructed people, Madison meant above all a people well-educated about our constitutional liberties and responsibilities. When at the conclusion of the Constitutional Convention, a woman asked Benjamin Franklin what kind of government he and the others had proposed for the nation, he famously responded, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." The wise old Philadelphia polymath had history in mind in giving that answer. He knew that he and his colleagues at the convention had supplied only the mechanics of what was needed for a republic to long endure. The rest could only be supplied by we the people, understanding and fulfilling our duties as citizens. That's why studying the Constitution is essential. How can we fulfill our duties as citizens if we don't understand the document on which that citizenship is based? I'm Robert George, professor of jurisprudence and director of the James Madison program at Princeton University for Prager.
Welcome back. So again, all I can say is, we're a republic, and for specific reasons, and the democracy's part of it is part of it, but it's not the focus, okay? And we really need to understand about that separation of powers and the whole concept of the Bill of Rights, and that the 10th amendment was, to whatever's not specifically given to the feds to do is given to the states and the people respectively, which includes towns and cities. We are the people. The government that governs least is the ones that governs the best, according to Abraham Lincoln, one of his quotes. And then also, the power. We need to keep that power separate. That's why we have those three branches of government. And one thing he didn't get into was that the Constitution requires every state to have its own constitution and it has to be a republic. Okay, so each state has to have its own constitution, and it has to be a republic, and it reports to the federal government. What's really sad, this is really sad, especially in today's climate, is the whole concept of the federal government and our borders and a borderless society and all this other stuff. But the biggest job of the federal government is to protect the borders and to protect this country from enemies outside, and that's what they're doing everything but. They opened up the borders because of these woke liberal policies and democratic policies that don't meet the constitutional criteria. They fly in the face of the Constitution, and we have people that misinterpret the Constitution time after time, and it's sad. But we have to start somewhere. Okay, we all need to be retrained. I needed to be retrained. I had to learn all this stuff. I mean, I remember learning some of it, but the application and the reality of it is a little bit different than academically, and that's what wokeness is. It's all academics, and then when you put it into reality and practice, it goes, oh no, really not that great. It's just really not that great, as we can see. So, at any rate, the last video is going to be about just, you know what I'm talking about, the abuse of power and the separation of power, and just how closely, in the biggest failure to you know, they talked about the Greek and Roman empires. The biggest failure was due to bad economic policies. They failed because they figured out once they could take money out of the treasury, you know, they're living large, and that's what our congressmen and senators and everyone are doing. They're just living large on the taxpayer's dime, and Social Security should be fine, but they've ruined it. They've taken the money. All right, let's fire this third one up at number 22, and let's see about too big a government. You let me know what you think.
Ever since Franklin Roosevelt promised Americans a New Deal in 1932, liberal politicians and pundits have insisted that the government must do more to alleviate poverty, increase economic security, and enhance the quality of life. But the word more implies there's a level of government activity that would be enough. In reality, however, there's never enough. That's because the liberal theory and practice of activist government is an endless pursuit of a goal that can't be achieved. When was the last time you heard a liberal politician say, "Yeah, we solved that social ill. We're just going to close up that government agency now, zero out the budget, and move on to another problem"? What you hear instead is that we need more. And more always sets the stage for still more down the road. Liberalism's lack of a limiting principle raises two questions. First, can our republic govern itself on this basis? Second, should it? My answers are maybe and no. Maybe we can go on, at least for a while, to continue to expand entitlement spending. We've been doing it for decades. Adjusted for inflation and population growth, government spending, federal, state, and local, was nearly 7 times as large in 2014 as it was in 1948. That sounds like a perfect example of the economist's adage, if something can't go on forever, it won't. In 1948, government spending amounted to 17%, just over 1/6 of our gross domestic product, the total value of all the goods and services produced by the American economy that year. In 2014, government spending was 32% of GDP, just under 1/3. This trend puts us on a steady course to a European social democracy, one where government spends more than 50% of GDP. Europe is straining under this burden. France, for example, the third largest economy in the European Union, has stagnant growth and unemployment twice as high as America's. Even nations with stronger economies, such as Sweden and Germany, face the dilemma of welfare states around the world. The number of workers paying taxes continues to decline, while the number of beneficiaries, those who receive government benefits, continues to grow. America has the same problem. As it is, government spending on social welfare and insurance programs, the part of the budget liberals like best, is crowding out everything else. Such spending accounted for 72% of federal outlays in 2014, twice the proportion in 1969. Common sense suggests this can't go on indefinitely. Which brings us to the second question. Should America govern itself on this basis? That is, should America become like Europe? Liberals say yes, conservatives say no. Conservatives insist that the European model is wrong for America, even if we can afford it. The key to this argument is that America's founding did not just establish a government, but defined a nation with a distinct character. Healthy skepticism of government, even when it announces the intention to use its power benevolently, is a central feature of that character. The "don't tread on me" spirit that animated the founding remains strong. Most Americans persist in believing that a government powerful enough to give you everything you want will also necessarily be powerful enough to take away everything you have, including your freedom. Conservatives believe that government power must be limited because the alternative is unlimited government. Liberals don't share this concern. If there's a social problem, they believe the best solution is a new government program. If it fails to achieve its goal, which it invariably does, the solution is a bigger government program, more. And when does more become enough? The honest answer is never. I'm Bill Vogley of the Claremont Institute for Prager.
Hey, welcome back. Okay, I don't know what time it is, but we should have 4 minutes left. And as you can see, it's all about power and who's wielding it and what the heck is going on here, folks. He made up a lot of good points. I mean, again, you know, when has the government ever said, we've solved this problem, we're closing out that agency, and we're going to move on to solve the next problems? No, they always want more, more, more. These governments are self-fulfilling prophecies. They just build themselves up. It's just way too much for the taxpayer to bear. We need to stop this and back it off and back it off. So, you know, like he said, the Bill of Rights was put on there, and specifically the states wouldn't sign it as it was because they thought it gave the federal government too much power. The states should be doing all this stuff and the people should be doing this, not the feds. So that's why, you know, the first thing, you know, Congress shall make no law, and you know, for the First and Second Amendments, and thou shalt not infringe, and all this, and then it gets down to the 10th Amendment. But most importantly, that is part of the Constitution. If you look at some of the newer amendments that have been added to the Constitution, the closer you get to the current times, the more wordy they are. The first 10 amendments are short and sweet and to the point, very unambiguous. It's very clear what they mean. But we can't even decipher the 14th Amendment, okay? It's crazy. It's just crazy. We could do a whole show on that, and we just may. But right now, and that's what's happening for anchor babies and all this stuff, that is not, no. How can you misinterpret that? I mean, the Founding Fathers were given, there's a book called The Laws of Nations, and someone from France, I forget who it was, sent 2 copies of the Laws of Nations to Ben Franklin, and he read it and he said, oh gee, give me some more of those. And so the Founding Fathers were well aware of the laws of nations, and that's what's built into all our Constitution, what's going on here. And when you look at it, see, I always thought that the child was whoever the mother was, but no, they say it's whoever the father is so it's the paternal one. So whoever the father is, that's what. So in other words, if you're over and vacationing in Europe and you have a baby, it's who the father is. The father's an American, and the baby's an American. You know, and if you're a Mexican and you're in America and you have a baby, it's a Mexican. It's not an American, because it's your nationality is what you are. You know, it's not where you are, it's what you are. But it's all in the laws of nations. There's a lot of things that we just don't quite understand because they never told us, they never give us the information. In fact, it's just sad we are where we are today because we have truth, you know, arbitrators called fact checkers. And you know, it's funny how they only check the conservatives, and the liberals can say whatever the heck they want, they never get checked. So the truth becomes fact-checked and called a conspiracy, and the lies that we live in a democracy, just carry on, it's okay, just no, we have to stop and step back and see what's going on here, people. So we're going to dive deeper into the Constitution, step by step, inch by inch, and what we should be understanding for our government. You know, we're looking for magnanimous people who do what's right, irregardless of what's going on and all the craziness in this world. But unfortunately, we're stuck with partisans and activists that are just wreaking havoc because it's only their way or the highway. And we can see that now. So we need to get back to the Constitution, back to the rule of law, and justice needs to be blind. Okay? And we'll You have to get into that. So, okay, I hope you enjoyed our, what do you call it, Season 1, Episode 1. This is our pilot, our season opener, and we'll do this again next month and dig a little deeper into the Constitution. Good night.